Hello Star Wars fans. While this film is about restoring Star Wars, it is also about restoring film in general. As you can see, this reel of Star Wars is, well, let's not beat about the bush, it's pink. And this is a problem with a lot of 1970s film. In this video, I'm going to show you how to restore the color, but first let's answer the question, why does some old film turn red? Well, really it depends on the process. Technicolor perfected the three-color process that defined early color film in 1932. The technique was expensive, involving three separate black and white film negatives, each capturing 1/3 of the full color spectrum. For this process, the spectrum was divided into red, green, and blue, RGB. Each of the three negatives would be dyed in the complementary third of the spectrum they represented, and then pressed into the emulsion for the final release print of the movie. The Technicolor process was expensive, but provided the lush color that has come to characterize 1940s blockbusters, and if you are lucky enough to own a Technicolor print of, say, Gone with the Wind or The Wizard of Oz, I bet the colors are just as vibrant today as they were 75 years ago, because the dyes used by Technicolor barely fade at all. Then Eastman Kodak came along with their Eastman color process. This type of film was both cheaper to process and cheaper by the foot, advantaging both cost-cutting studios and smaller releases with more limited print runs. Unlike Technicolor, which had to be shipped to Technicolor facilities, Eastman color could be developed in standard photo labs. So Technicolor's share of the market began to sink, and by 1975 their facilities were all being closed, ceding color film processing entirely to Eastman color. But Eastman color had a major problem. The dye used in the cyan third of the spectrum, that's blue to those of you who are like me and only see the world in primary colors and look puzzled when our wives talk about colors like fuchsia. Where was I? Oh yes. The blue dye used in the Eastman color process would fade to red and eventually clear while in storage. This has been a nightmare for film preservation efforts for obvious reasons, and while color fade is a problem with poorly preserved film in general, the first 20 years of Eastman color prints are in a particular danger. Eastman color film can fade to pink in as little as 5 years if not properly stored. Eastman Kodak introduced low fade film in 1979, which improved the durability of the cyan dye, and by about 1982, most of the films sent to your local cinema were being printed on the new low fade LPP stock. It's worth noting that this low fade does not mean no fade, but it's certainly a heck of a lot better. So anyway, this reel of Star Wars was printed on the old Eastman stock and is now pink. Let's go through it. You can see it's pretty pink all the way through. This particular reel, by the way, is owned by -1 of Team -1, and it was one of the first sets of reels that he acquired for his silver screen edition, the pre-special edition version of Star Wars. He was kind enough to dig up this original 10-bit color 1080p scan made back in 2010, something like that. At that time, the team could not find a way to digitally restore enough color to make the film watchable, at least not without a bunch of weird color artifacts. In the end, of course, he found a low-fade print of the film and he never looked back. About a year ago, somebody calling himself Dr. Dre created an algorithm to almost perfectly match the colors of one image to another. I already demonstrated how his free tool was able to restore some other faded Eastman footage of Star Wars, Greedo and Han Solo, with very impressive results, although there were still some obvious artifacts in the window behind them. Then, a few weeks ago, I was trying to free up some hard disk space, and I came across an 8-bit color H.264 compressed scan of this faded Eastman reel. On a whim, I decided to run it through Dre's tools. I've actually been beta testing a new color balance restoration algorithm that he developed too, and the results were just astounding. So I contacted -1 and I requested the lossless 10-bit color scan of the same reel, and he was kind enough to send it to me. So that's what you're looking at here. The first thing we need to do is to find a good color reference. Since we all know that the color timing on the 2004 DVD and the 2011 Blu-ray is just horrible, this leaves us with the 2006 bonus DVD or a fan-made project. In this case, I'm using the Star Wars 77 Gout Upscale by Team Blue. This is a 720p upscale of the 2006 bonus DVD, with color corrections by U2. I like the colors in this version, more so than Harmy's Despecialized Edition 2.5, but an unfortunate byproduct of the upscale is that there is a layer of almost static grain sitting on top of the action like a blanket, which was just so annoying I couldn't watch it. But for our purposes here, which is just to copy the colors from it, it should work well. Now before starting this tutorial, I already ran through all the steps once with another color source, again by Team Blue. In this case it was their V3 edition, which was also a gout sourced DVD. And this is how it turned out. Let's take a look. So, if I look at the effects here and I turn off my two color LUTs, I split it in two. Alright, so there it is. It's all pink. I turn on my two color LUTs. Again, I'm on the wrong one. And it looks much better. Now here's the only place I'm not so keen. I think the flesh tones are maybe not quite right. See how pink Leia's face is? I don't think that's quite right. So I'm going to try it again. Like I say, this was the version 3 DVD. I'm going to try it again for you now. Star Wars 77 Blu-ray by Team Blue. Alright, this by the way was done with just these two LUTs. The entire reel with these two LUTs, which is perhaps why it's not so good in some scenes but fantastic in others. Fixing it on a shot-by-shot basis will probably produce much better results, so that's what I'm going to try now. So the first thing I need to do is select a shot to fix. Let's go back to our pink source. Since this is the one that doesn't look so good, this scene here, and the one I just tried, I'm going to do that one. So this one is Han, Chewie, Luke and Leia heading back to the Falcon after they emerge from the trash compactor. And so let's trim the working area to just this one shot. Actually, let's duplicate this. We'll call it faded shot. Zoom in a little bit. On the beginning of this. Right there. Okay. Zoom back out. Let's move this along, and I'm going to hold down Shift, and it should snap right to where I was. Excellent. Trim it. Now, where's the end of this shot? What I'm doing here is I'm holding down Control and using the right arrow to go one frame at a time. On the other side. Alright, so there's the shot we're going to work with. Now let's take a look at our color reference. We need to find the same shot and trim that. Okay, so I've already added that to composition. I'm going to find that shot. We're going too far. Okay, right about here. Let's zoom in a bit. Okay, now let's crop off the black bars. Okay. Now I'm going to take my faded shot composition, put it underneath this one. I need to try and register the two as closely as possible. So first let's shrink it down so that it fits, because it's probably too big. Oh, what was that? I thought I trimmed this. Did I trim this one? I trimmed this one. Okay, I trimmed the wrong one. Never mind. So back to here. We don't want faded shot. We want this. Okay. So now we need to line them up, and I find the easiest way to do that, because unfortunately there's no automatic way to do it in After Effects, is to manually do it using good old classic difference. Make this just a little bit smaller. Smaller. Alright, I don't think we can get it perfect. I think that's close enough. Okay, before I go any further, let's test out a few commercial tools and see what they can do for us. First, let's try the auto color effect in After Effects. Well, that's not very helpful. Okay, so we're going to match it to our color source. It's not too bad. Let's play with the settings here. Now, to be fair, Rematch was designed to address the problems of multi-camera shots. In other words, matching the footage from one camera with that of another camera. And in my experience, if you have two sources that are already very similar, it does a pretty good job of matching them up. So we're really asking more of it here than it was designed for. But that's not going to work either. Let's get back on track here and do what we're going to do, which is use Dr. Dre's tools. First, we're going to need some sample frames from both the faded version and our color reference. Rather than manually grabbing frames, let's create a new composition based on this one. Let's remove this effect. Okay. So we're going to create a new composition based on this one, and this one, as you can see, is called 000. So this composition, drag it to a new one. Okay. Alright, so we have the color mode switched on. First, let's resize this. Position settings, square pixels, select the aspect ratio. Let's make it 48. And then let's cut. Excellent. Now, how many frames do we have here? 379 frames. So divide that by 16, it's about 23. So let's enable time remapping. And then we shall alt click on the stopwatch. And this is our expression. N equals 23, N times time. Okay? It should give us about 16 frames now. And do this composition. The new duration for this is only 16 frames. Alright. Composition. Add to render queue. There's a TIFF sequence, trillions of colors, and we're going to put it in a folder called ref, and we're going to call this color ref. Save, render, boom, done. So now we go back to our original one and we turn that layer off. We go back to our new composition, and now you see it's pink. We go back to the render queue, go down to the bottom, duplicate with file name, but we're going to change the file name and location. And put in faded and call it faded. Render. Bam. So now if we look in that faded folder, we have a bunch of faded images. And if we look in the ref folder, we have the colored images that match. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a little montage here. So increase the canvas size to make room for all 16 images. 4 4s are 16, therefore 400% bigger from the left corner, top left. Take the next 15, drag them on. Now I'm going to save this. There's my little montage of faded clips. Now I'm going to do exactly the same thing. With my reference clips. If you have an earlier version of Photoshop, you may find that when you drag them all in like that, they'll all open in their own little windows, and if that happens, you'll just have to copy and paste them all in one at a time. But newer versions of Photoshop allow you to just paste them all into one canvas and move them around and just hit enter when they're positioned where you want them, which is much nicer. So, we saved that one. And now we have our two lovely images. So we're going to switch finally to Dre's tools. We're going to start with color balance. Just going to use all the default settings. We're going to import. A faded montage. Close that window and say build. It will build a nice color balancing model for us. Won't take very long. That looks pretty good, I think. Obviously still faded, but good. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to save the output. Make it a TIFF, and we will call this balanced. And we'll export the LUT, which we'll call balance. Balance LUT. Now we're going to switch to the color matching tool, which you may have seen before in some of my other tutorials. We'll import our freshly balanced clip. Now when the app saved it, it added this white border, so we need to crop it. Put our reference image, which is in ref. That one doesn't need cropping. Again, leaving all the default settings. Build. It's done. And I'm going to save that just so we can compare it in a moment. I'm going to export that lot. Put it next to the other one. One called balance, one called match. Okay, so now we have our two LUTs. You're probably wondering why we can't just go straight from this one to this one, why we have to balance it first. And the answer is we don't. You can go straight from the one to the other, but you'll get better results if you balance it first. To demonstrate, if we go straight to the pink one, and we'll keep the same reference image, and we build a new model, in this case, it still seems to look absolutely awesome. But I've seen other cases where you get a lot of artifacts, particularly later on in the lightsaber scenes. So let's export that LUT too. Match, no balance. Let's go back to After Effects and see what we can see. So we go back here, which is just the shot on its own. Let's apply those LUTs. Balanced, matched, well, again, still not perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better than it was. Now let's do this. We move these effects into an adjustment layer. So turn them off and on. Let's add another adjustment layer. We'll turn that one off, and then layer 2 we'll use the other LUT we created. Which was the match no balance. Which in this case may actually work better. So there you have it. I actually think I like that one better, the match without balance on this particular shot. Could still use a little fine tuning, maybe bring it into resolve and adjust the color wheels manually. But from that to that, very nice. One final thing before I leave you. Let's go to the one that I erroneously called faded shot, but was in fact the whole reel, and apply those same LUTs to that and see what happens. So we'll create 2 adjustment layers. Number 3 will be the match without balancing. The reason this works so well is because the fading seems to be fairly consistent throughout the whole reel. You know, the amount of blue that's missing, the amount of red that's been added must be about the same all the way through, so reducing it for one scene seems to work quite well for all of it. Okay, turn that off. Now let's do the other one. And we balance. And then we match. No. Overall though, I think I like this one, oops, better than that one. Let's fix the aspect ratio, shall we? So anyway, if we repeated the steps we took to create that little montage of images for every single shot, well, maybe just every single scene, then we'll produce better results. So there you have it. Hopefully you found this video either helpful or entertaining, or perhaps even both. And the next time you see a faded 35mm trailer being sold dirt cheap on eBay because it's pink, you'll remember this video and you'll be able to buy it knowing that you can restore it. Oh, and if you happen to work in Hollywood restoring film, you know where to find me.